Well, welcome to our show. Today, we're thrilled to have Sherry Horowitz with us, a trailblazer at the intersection of AI and creativity. Sherry is renowned for her ability to blend artistry and artificial intelligence, transforming the abstract into the tangible. We're excited to have her share her unique approach to creative strategy and design. As the AI Conjurer, Sherry leverages technology to craft innovative solutions that not only captivate, but also resonate deeply with audiences. Join us as we explore the fun of creativity through the lens of an expert who's redefining the boundaries of what's possible. Welcome, Sherry.
Hi, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We're excited to talk to you.
We are super excited to talk to you.
Warren knows you better because he's stalked you online longer than I have.
Well, I know Sherry from the Futur Pro group, and she is a fantastic contributor with that community, and she has been one of the top voices speaking about AI in general outside of the Futur Pro group, and I've really loved her work and loved seeing what she's produced. So I was super excited to really, and I've enjoyed every chance that I've seen you on podcasts or other venues like this. I've really enjoyed your input and insight into this category because it's so amazing. And like my brother and I, we've been exploring it for some time and just enjoy the creativity of it and just the nuance of it. And you bring such a different perspective to it. And I want to hear your thoughts on how you got into AI and what you saw as important when you began your first steps into this frontier.
Okay, cool. I have a long history in the arts. So I'm not coming to it like waking up one day and saying, oh, this is cool tech and look what I can do. I saw the potential because I was a graphic designer in my early career. I studied fashion design. I studied advertising design. I have a master's of fine arts and poetry. I've published many years of, if anyone has ever tried to do publishing in the literary world, it is a long, painful process, but I did do that for a long time. And as a creative person and as a mom, I've been in and out of different industries. So one of the things that also I've done is, besides for the arts, is I actually worked in the commercial real estate industry as a broker for about 5 years.
Oh, fun. Wow.
So I have this like weird, I'm not going to go through all the crazy jobs that I did over the years, but I'm saying I have this weird blend of skills also, but I am at the very core an artistic person and an artist. I mean, I've never sold my artwork from like art for art's sake. It's always been commercial. So your question was, so when the tech came out, I immediately saw all the shortcuts and how much it would change the way I worked. So probably specific to my personality is I am somebody who has so many ideas that I cannot always execute on. So what AI did for me is that it tapped into my ability to be an artist, but also my ability to write as a critical thinker, as a poet, and to take all my business experience. Like I spent time in Y Combinator, trying to build my own digital product, learning how to leverage that knowledge for my clients when I do brand ideation for them. So I immediately saw the insane amounts of efficiency that it was going to bring to my work. So from day one, I have been creating a space with my brand that just shows all these applications of the tech. And it's very vast.
Oh yeah, it is phenomenal. When I saw the capability, like you were saying, how the ideas that ramble through our creative brains so often and so frequently, and we've got to find some way of getting them out, and we just don't have the time or ability to get all of them out. And this just allows us to amplify that in such an amazing way.
Well, the thing that I'd like to just embellish upon that point is that you really are a much better user of the tech when you have deep foundational understanding of a topic. Because what many people don't realize is that the LLM is a repository of vast amounts of information, and how you tap into that requires deep understanding. Like, you need to know where to look to find something, and then how to ask for it, and then how to use it. So in my case, and I'll let you say something in a second, but to speak to my abilities, like, I have deep knowledge of art. I studied art history. I created art. I've used many different mediums, from sketching to paint, some photography. I've studied all that. So for me, it's like, I don't need to be a master at every single medium now to visualize and to talk about what I want to see.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Warren and I have discussed at length, is how important it is. He always mentioned, I've been a graphic designer for years, but the people who are killing it with Midjourney are the wordsmiths. And as he and I have looked at your art and then and looked on your website, the AIConjurer.com, and kind of read through that, you shared what I just thought was truly foundational, like truly impressive foundational elements to your approach to artificial intelligence, where you tie it into your history of Judaism and poetry, and how that led you to poetry, and then how all of this connects to AI in kind of an inspiring way. And I feel like people look at the tech and they say, well, tech, one more thing to separate us from, human connection and the divine and those kinds of things. But for you, you're finding this, you describe it almost like a spiritual experience. So I kind of wanted to hear what you had to say about like poetry and meaning and art in Midjourney and how you're doing that.
I appreciate that you actually picked that up, because I don't know that so many people make that connection. It is a very deep spiritual connection. And I think that actually I have blogged about it. I haven't been focusing on my blog, but I do put essays out now and then when I feel that I have something compelling to share. But there is this idea in language, and when you use language, it's a very, no one ever asked me the question this way, so I'm going to like think out loud now, but it's, there's a lot of philosophical premises that come into creating compelling artwork. Mm-hmm. It's highly contextual and textual. In other words, language is a precursor to vision. It's
Can we quote that and like put that everywhere? Language. Yes. Can you say it again? What was it?
Language. I have written about this. Language is a precursor to vision. When I sketch, when I come up with an idea, often in my history of sketching, I didn't always know exactly what I was going to draw. It's maybe my process. It's the way I write poetry as well. There's this inchoate sense of struggling with an idea, contextualizing it, placing yourself in a point of view. This is very poetic. Understanding tone, voice, position in relation to other. This is very, very, very fundamental, and it is a very spiritual idea. An author that articulates this well is the philosopher Martin Buber, who wrote about self and other, and from a very Jewish point of view. What people don't maybe understand, and what I bring to the work in terms of spirituality, is that Judaism is a very deep philosophy that requires insane amounts of self-reflection. I mean, we have survived insane amounts of persecution and exile without country, without necessarily leadership. But the premises in the spirituality and the foundations of the philosophy require that kind of deep critical thinking. And if I bring anything to my work, it is that ability to think very fundamentally, very wide and very granular at the same time.
It shows in your work because you have such a better touch than so many of the other artists in using Midjourney that it just speaks volumes about your capabilities and your knowledge, the knowledge base, that foundational and philosophical things that you bring to this particular technology. And as I've told Jacob, and I told many of the copywriters when this technology first was made widely available, I said, it's the writers, guys, the copywriters. I'm like, it's you guys that are doing the best work. And right now is the time for you guys to become the graphic artists. And they looked at me like, what are you saying?
You know, Warren, I started trying to teach this. And what I discovered is that I shifted from trying to teach it to a wide audience to only a very narrow advanced audience. But even that proved challenging. And I'll tell you why. And that's what I said before we started recording. I do the job of three people. I do the job of a visual artist, which is a visual narrative, a writer, which is a critical thinker, and a strategist, which is the combination maybe of those two skills, but is actually even more skills. It's critical thinking and understanding how to research something. But what the other thing I discovered is that is a rare thing to find fleshed out in one person usually. So where the copywriters shine is, yes, they are wordsmiths, but they generally lack experience with visual narrative. And where a creative director shines is perhaps strategy and language, but also lacks some of the art direction. And art directors are great with visual narrative. Sometimes they lack the language skills or the rhetorical critical thinking. Did I lose you guys?
No, you got me.
Speaking our language here.
Yeah. And you're saying some things that are really impacting me right now because I think I've got the strategy bit and I definitely have the visual artist bit. But the writing bit, I'm definitely learning so much more because I wouldn't consider myself a writer. I've written a couple of things and I write my social posts and those kind of things, but I don't consider myself that quote writer. And so I'm learning that skill. And I love that nexus that you bring to this particular technology, that you have those three capabilities that you're infusing together and then it allows you to do so many amazing things. Jacob, you were saying something? Sorry.
Yeah. No, I wanted to ask Sherry this, which is, and we've talked about this a couple times, which is with the advent of this technology, and you mentioned LLMs and needing deep knowledge, is, and this is a concern that a lot of people have, is it's going to take away our need or ability to gain deep knowledge. And I don't think that that's true. And we've debated some different ways to look at that. But this is also something you've talked about on your website, which was that it helps you learn. AI helps you learn. And so how do you develop the deep knowledge necessary to ask it for what you want? Because you mentioned like, and this again relates to your spiritual experience, which is deep reflection. And so I know that's part of the recipe, right? But how do we encourage others to realize, okay, to truly leverage artificial intelligence beyond just the data analysis piece? How do we use it to refine our deep knowledge, to gain deep knowledge, to learn deeply? What are your thoughts?
It's a great question. I love that question. So actually, I try to teach this to people, but I haven't even gotten somebody who's willing to put in the time to understand this. When I am not happy with the result, okay, let's back up a little bit. Just bring me back in case I forget what I'm saying.
Can I actually take one step even further back? I don't mean to interrupt you, but the question crossed my mind, which is, I don't consider myself like an amazing writer, but I've written But poetry intrigues me. And so why and how, right? Like, because I'm aware that people who are good at poetry and song lyrics and stuff like that is a gift that I have not tried to develop. And so I'm just curious. So add that to your answer. I apologize for interrupting you, but
No,
take that what you will.
I probably would have, I may have come around to that, but okay. Let's start back a little bit. Midjourney is unique in the sense that it's an extremely sophisticated language model. And the why it's so good and why my prompts really I don't even bother with any of the other platforms is that it's codified the fundamentals of visual artistry or cohesiveness to a very high level. So that whatever you put in, even superficially, you're going to get a very coherent translation of it.
Agreed.
You have to I forgot the question exactly, but you'll have to bring it back because I'm going to go off on a tangent now to explain something to you.
How do you get deep knowledge? How do you develop it? How do you use AI to get it? And then I assumed that, the exercise of learning to craft poetry, to craft words is related to that.
Correct.
And so you were talking about that.
Correct. So let me just think how I could describe this. Well, let me just give you a little framework. What I've been telling people on a lot of these interviews, because I guess people are seeing something in my work. I've been getting a lot of interviews, so I'm trying to break it down for people. There's many acts of interpretation that go on in using a visual LLM. And what I mean by that, I'm going to try to say it really short, and then you'll bring back your question. We'll talk about it. You are interpreting from an index, an SEO index, a library style index, a tagged index that is then filtered through an algorithm, which is very associative. And then you're filtering that through, you're accessing it through many kinds of language and visual narrative language. So it's a very complex interpretive skill that you're going from interpreting how something might have been tagged and indexed to how an LLM might have stored it through the lens of poetry, technical language, prose, code, culture, history, genre, medium, style.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Right? So you are literally going through these layers of interpretation. So what was your question again?
How do you engage in the deep learning?
So the deep learning is, you need to be somewhat well read. Okay.
Fair enough.
That helps.
Yeah, I like it.
But once you have critical thinking skills, okay, let's say you are a person who can think critically. So this goes back to the point. You can use it very superficially or you can use it very deeply. So my point is, there's a lot of people using Midjourney and these AI visualizers in a very, very superficial way. But when you use it intentionally, you need to go through all those filters. You need to elicit and you need to hack, because many times what you write has nothing to do with the way you would describe it. So I'll give you an example, okay? The word pregnancy was banned at one point, and I needed a pregnant superhero for whatever reason. I was celebrating motherhood. Okay, it's on my website. Actually, it was a campaign to celebrate women in tech, and I was celebrating motherhood, and I needed a pregnant superhero. Marvel superheroes will be a great reference for that look of a really modern superhero. They're never pregnant, and the word pregnancy was banned. So I used language that was poetic of expectancy and motherhood, and that didn't work. Because I knew that there was pregnant women in the corpus. Like, there's no way pregnant women exist. So that's just to give you an example. But the deep learning comes from when you're using it intentionally. I research things. I look for data sets, so to speak, that would have something in them that I need. For example, Edward Hopper. Is it Hooper or Hopper? I always get mixed up. He has just this very pretty minimalist oil paint style, which you can get from many different artists, even just a general genre reference if you needed that effect. But what's in his work is also a theme of isolation. So if I wanted to get isolated figures who are never standing together, I would use his name in a reference. But you would need to know that about his body of work. And when I can't find something or something's not working, I hack it by just spending time researching. Now, I happen to have studied art history, and I also am a voracious reader, so I kind of know where to look.
You have important context.
Yes, right. I have, whereas other people might have to look harder. But if you're good at being a Google searcher, you know how you search for things on Google? There's like 25 ways to look for one thing. That's the kind of skill also that I'll use.
Well, I'll say we're sons of a librarian. And we spent a lot of time reading books, visiting libraries, and learning how to research. So what you're saying resonates so well and deeply with me. Jacob, I think I speak for both of us in that capacity.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think it's interesting, this way that you broke it down and said, look, you've got to look at the artistic lens, but then also you've got to look at the data lens. You've got to look at the, like thinking of a taxonomy system and structure. Like I hadn't considered like how to build a fantastic Midjourney prompt. Start with style, history, artists that are similar, but I kind of wonder if you could put together a checklist to say, okay, this is, if I want to structure something very specific, how would I go about it? Because as I've put stuff in and tried to, this is embarrassing, but I'll share with you. We saw your art on your website, and Warren's like, nobody can do what Sherry does. And I'm like, let me try this. I can't do what you do. I
can't.
I tried really hard. And so I sat with Midjourney 3 hours. So it's just this is impossible. but I wanted to see how you do it. And I was very excited to talk to you. But I think that it sounds like this is how you think about it.
Yes.
So thank you for revealing that, because
Sure.
it sounds just like a really neat way to approach not just Midjourney, but probably also ChatGPT as well. You mentioned culture, history. I'm going to go back and listen to this and make that list of the different lenses that you could view it through to kind of better understand how to get there, because that's fascinating.
I like to tell people that you have to think like a creative director, see like an art director, and write like a novelist.
It's a big ask.
That is a big ask. Jeez.
It means you need more skills than before.
Yes,
yeah.
And that is what I do.
Really cool.
And it shows in your work. So
thank you. I mean, I am so grateful for the tech, because it really lets me express myself in ways that language and my mastery of drawing just couldn't. I mean, I don't have time to master photography. I'm a mom, and I know how to use a camera, though. I'm saying I really understand the art of photography. I understand the art of oil paint. I understand the art of the written word. So I get to express myself so well.
Sherry, thank you for sharing all of this. I want to make sure that we give you enough time to plug yourself, because people should be hiring you, right? So
yes.
So you put up a website, and I just, you've done philosophy with us, you've done creativity, and I think we probably have time to jump into a little bit more of that, but I want to make sure we don't run out of time without giving you a chance to say, what services do you currently offer, and what benefits you can bring to potential clients?
Okay, I think that I am really now focused on advanced work. I've been working with creative directors, film directors, and I'm really a secret weapon because it collapses that team process where you have to, if you go through a sprint, right? It's very time consuming to take a lot of experts and put them in a room. But because I have such good interpretive skills, and I found that this is successful for people as a service, is to be in a room, an ideation session, and then interpret everything for everybody and give them both the visual and the messaging. And it's worked wonders.
So you're connecting disparate skill sets to do.
Yeah. So basically, I am really a great secret weapon to have in ideation because I can execute on the vision as well.
Fantastic.
Does that make sense? Like strategy, pitch decks, product development, because I can now align an entire branded aesthetic with the messaging and how it might look as a commercial, as a package, as an aesthetic, with the language, even a commercial storyboard. And I do that well.
And as far as industries that you focus on, because, just in case somebody random walks along this video and wants to hire you, like what's kind of your ideal client, your best fit?
I would say agencies, large agencies are my focus. Like I would love to work at Pentagram or Whedon and Kennedy. I think right now what's happening is that they think that they can do it themselves and learn it on their own. And they'll get so far. Maybe there's one or two other people like me in an agency who have those skills. There probably are, I imagine. But I hope that, to get the word out there that I would be best suited for that. And also I think in terms of in the entertainment industry, doing ideation for set design, movie aesthetics, product development, advertising. I mean, I put it on my website and I post about it all the time, but it is advanced. It is advanced work, and I prefer to work on an advanced level.
Very cool.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Also, I wanted to dive a little bit into one of the things that we're all struggling with right now is that copyright issue. What does it mean to be an owner of a piece of art in an era where art can be created so quickly and rapidly based on the experience or the training that they've provided this model? And you and I shared a post on LinkedIn where we talked a little bit about that, and the simplistic way in which I see it on one side is that I have been trained for almost 50 years because I've been using my eyes, ears, and other senses to absorb all this content. And that has all influenced the way that I draw, the way that I design, the way that I see things and perceive. And how does that come in with the artificial intelligence strata?
I mean, this is how I see it. Okay, there is a training issue that companies did take work to train the models without permission, and I don't condone theft or
Right.
or taking people's work without permission. However, I will say that training does not equal copying. In other words, the vastness and the transformative nature of the LLM and the tech, especially in a visual engine like Midjourney, does not mean that the end user is copying something original. It's such a big disconnect and such a big divide, and it's such big amounts of data that are getting crunched that I think that training equals training and copying equals copying, and training does not equal copying. In other words, it's a tool and it's the way you use it. There's precedent for that in the US law. There's a de minimis argument. I think, Jacob, you're a lawyer.
I'm a lawyer. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to use these terms as a layperson. Please understand that I am not lawyer. I do not know all.
You're nailing it. You're doing good.
I don't know the history of precedent, but I did want to know when the copyright issue came out, about it, because I don't want to steal from anyone else, but I don't think that I am stealing from anyone else, because if I create something based on a zillion points of data, I feel that it's like it's a filter that's equivalent to my curatorial skill, in that I am presenting this as my intention. And whatever it was trained on, it could have been created with fair use data as well. In other words, the tech itself could be built and is built on a lot of fair use data. I don't know the percentage of how much was stolen or not, but even if we were to start over, I could still produce anything that I make with fair use. And if we're going to go down that road, Google needs to be put out of business, because practically speaking, enforcing copyright law is so difficult for a small person, like a solopreneur cannot even enforce it. So practically speaking, we're already in a reality where you have to prove damages, and there is copyright in place for that, so that even if somebody does use the tech to copy, they can be sued. So I think it's going to die down, this argument.
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense that companies, like, for example, I think ChatGPT is approaching news outlets and saying, hey, we'll buy your content, right? So that we have accurate and up-to-date information, which, anybody who's typed into ChatGPT and gotten, how did they get it up to date to April 2023, right? Clearly they were using information that was already out there that other people had written and that maybe they hadn't gotten permission to use. So I'm not so worried. I don't think that anyone thinks, at least not in my sphere that I've talked to on the legal side, that is like, oh, well, if you use Midjourney, you're violating the copyright of the people whose data created the beast. I don't think that that's the issue. The issue for me that rankles me a little is this idea that you don't have copyright to what you create via an artificial intelligence, which, and I could see some basic arguments, like if you type in circle, Midjourney will give you 8 million different kinds of things, 8 million different kinds of circles. But again, particularly when you see artwork like the kind that you're trying to produce and that you do produce, and then you take somebody like me and who spends 3 hours and can't do it, then you realize, okay, maybe there's some creativity. And then, so the Copyright Office looked at this, and there's some litigation and some precedent being formed, right? But it's just one decision, and it's not the end all be all. Mm-hmm. And I thought at first, when I heard that they came down and said, well, you don't own the copyright to it, I thought, well, these guys haven't studied the issue out. Then I read the opinion and I learned these guys really did study the issue out. I just think they came to the wrong conclusion.
I would agree with you to some degree.
Same.
To some degree, I do agree with you.
Yeah. Well, when you look at and again, it's been a while. I have a workable knowledge of IP and copyright law, right? But I'm not a professor of it. When you look at all the case law that is out there, I know which cases to read to make sure I make the right arguments. But when you look at the case law that's out there and you see companies like Google, who has been sued over, the thumbnails of pictures, and is that a copyright violation? And we just decided the benefit outweighs the harm, right, is essentially where the courts came down. Yep. And then you look at artificial intelligence. It's hard to say, how do the benefits not outweigh the harm, if there is any? And then secondly, the other part that really bothers me about the idea that you don't own the copyright to what you get in Midjourney is the copyright precedent related to taking pictures. Because there's even one line in one of those cases where it's all like, if you've got your finger on the button and lightning strikes and makes you accidentally press the button, then you've got the copyright on that image. And how do you have the copyright to that and not to Midjourney?
Which is hours of work.
Right. Well, and for many, it can definitely be a much more focused endeavor than my kid who picks up my cell phone, takes a bunch of pictures accidentally, and has the copyright to all of them, right?
That's why I think it's not a sustainable argument.
It's not a sustainable argument, and particular as the models develop, and yeah. So I think long term, you are going to own the copyright to any image you create via an AI. And I think in a vacuum, the legal arguments that have been made in those decisions might make sense to other lawyers. But if you sit those judges and lawyers down in front of a computer and say, create, it won't take long for them to realize, holy cow, this is mine. I did this, I'm proud of this, because lawyers are good with words generally, right? And there are chances out there that they can make some amazing things. So, and then quit being lawyers, and who knows what they'll do with their time. So
I'm not sure I don't know how that'll play out, because copyright, like, I never even tried to ever copyright any of my work, just because I know that the hassle is not worth the effort so much of the time.
Well, so you own, like, the minute that you create something, you own the copyright in it, right? Period. But registering it just isn't practical unless you're publishing a book or publishing an album or something like that.
I think that I post about this, and I think about it, and I think that the skills moving forward mean that because the barrier to entry for execution has been democratized or made so much easier in some ways, it's really the ideas that matter. And the ideas were always what mattered behind a copyrighted body of work. It was associated with a thought, a context of thought, a package of thought, of something interesting, unique that surprised us. So that kind of classical trope is still true. I mean, I have thousands and thousands, embarrassed to say how many pictures I have. Can I really copyright them all? I mean, who owns a rainy day? Who owns a oil painting of a rainy day?
Right.
I mean, originality is what you can kind of copyright. If I'm original, it'll come back to me. I feel there's a certain karma and energy in the world. I mean, certainly from a spiritual perspective, I believe that, but just from a practical perspective. So it's just like the copyright thing. Look, I put out a post last year when Tiffany and Nike did this collaboration, and it kind of blew up in their faces because people didn't like it. And I suggested a new idea, and I used Midjourney to present it. And I posted it. This is how I think guys should have done it. Okay. And it was basically marrying the idea of.
Did you get a cease and desist letter?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Actually, I had this really nice creative director from, I think, Chiat Day, send me a note on LinkedIn saying, hey, look, they made your sneaker. A month later, I don't know if they took my idea. I can't prove it, but they actually made a sneaker based on my idea.
Fantastic.
We might want to talk off record.
I can't prove that. Like,
well, it's
not my company; it's their brand. Like, it would have been nice if they would have given me at least credit.
There's some interesting copyright. I don't mean to take over with the copyright discussion, but there are some really interesting precedents about those kinds of issues. So apparently, like the movie Rocky IV, I forget which Rocky, but one of them was written just by a random guy who sent the script in and said, "You guys should make this movie," and they were like, "Thanks,"
right.
Because he didn't own the copyright to it because it was a derivative work. So you could write about, like, all the fan fiction about Harry Potter belongs to J.K. Rowling, right? Like, it just does. And that's the way copyright law tends to work. And there's some nuance there, right? So I don't want any lawyers who are watching this are going to just pounce on me and catch every inaccuracy. But no, so the other issue, though, that I think is interesting, and this, again, tends towards Midjourney, and your quote that I think was really good, which is language is the precursor to vision. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah, which is this, like, when you write, you undoubtedly have the copyright to whatever you write. And in a very real sense, Midjourney is creating an image based on your language.
Yes.
And to me, it seems surprising that argument hasn't come up, that the resulting image is a derivative work of your copyrightable and copyrighted text, because copyright accrues the minute you fix it in a medium. And so by typing it into the interface, you have a copyright in the text. And so any derivative work, you should have the copyright too. So Sorry to go off on a tangent, but these arguments are going to keep coming up, and it'll get. I
told you it was going to be
eventually.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You know what? You just gave me an idea. I should copyright my entire prompt library.
Yes. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? But the thing is the thing that you need to understand is the minute it's fixed in a medium, then it's copyrighted. And getting a registered copyright is different. It's different in the sense that it allows you to sue for damages. Because if you don't register it, you can't sue for damage. So if you'd registered that Nike, this is how you guys should have done it, and then you'd registered in the copyright office, and then maybe you could sue them. I don't know, right?
Well, and I know that
I'm not looking to spend my life in court. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I know that's going to resonate with you, Sherry, because the medium is the message. And so if you've got that fixed, then you have that. So, yeah.
You're referencing Marshall McLuhan, right?
Oh, yeah. It was fantastic. When studying him and his work at the university, I found that. And that's why I resonated so well with you when I heard you are also a fan. I was like, oh, yes.
We're actually working on something with Andrew McLuhan, his grandson, right now.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, because he teaches about perception based on Marshall's work. And we got to know each other through, however, and I just think what's interesting about using Midjourney is that my process for prompting really works in any LLM. In other words, It works in ChatGPT as well. It works in any large language model. And
I think that's interesting that there's some consistency there. And I think it has to do with you talking about these layers of different taxonomies, which like I've had a way of revising prompts that is functional, but that's really, truly stellar. Like I'm seriously going to later write this down and just list all of the different ways that I imagine that it probably sorts data and then consider how I've been writing prompts.
And I'll give you something else that'll blow your mind a bit more.
This side.
Yeah, I don't know which side, the visual, the written. So there's also something that happens when you gather all those techniques and then you layer into the prompt according to the way that the tech works. So there's a little finesse that happens also in hacking that in the prompt itself. So I'll give you like a little trick. This is a really valuable trick for everyone listening. When you layer language, you can force the machine to look harder for something else without weights by brute force of language. And I find that works way better because it's so sophisticated and sensitive to the nuances in language. So for example, I will layer synonyms after putting in the language in unexpected ways and then adding another synonym at the end. So because the tech is structured a certain way to work where it filters, like it gives greater importance to the beginning of the prompt than as it ebbs away, because what you're doing is you're thinking about how language is very ambiguous and how it might be associative. And this is the poet in me talking, is the choice of word. For a very non-poetic example would be buffet versus dinner versus luncheon versus feast. And then layering in, okay, what I want you to look at it there, but then I want you to also look here.
That's fascinating. Because it makes sense to me. It makes instant sense.
Yeah, synonyms. It would be fascinating to see some of those prompts that you've put together with those additional synonyms. I'm going to have to try that.
And then you would layer or stack them in different orders as well to see how it reacts.
Yes, and it's a very iterative process. So just like it's learning from me, I'm learning from it.
Sherry, I want to ask you a quick question because I know like Midjourney Alpha, I haven't yet received access to it. How many images have you created?
Oh my God, there's a big problem right now.
Well, I am just barely, I'm just barely over 2,500. So I want to know what your level is, because this will speak volumes to our audience as well.
My biggest problem right now, and some coder, I know some engineer is going to find a solution for this, because it's a big problem for the alpha users. I am drowning in output. Drowning. I cannot manage. I can't even remember the prompts. I have to like sit there and think, oh my God, what was in that prompt? Because it's usually not language that I would even think of. And I don't know.
Because they've got to make that more manageable for you.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to fix that, but it's a big problem. So I'm drowning in output.
What's your total number? Do you know?
I checked about a month ago, about 30,000, which is,
oh my gosh,
which is not even, you know, there are some guys who like Jonathan Iserman, like he probably has 100,000, but I'm way more intentional than the way he uses it. He's a programmer, he's a coder. I think he has stuff on automatic, like he has some software cranking.
Goes, yeah.
Yeah, but I can't, it's too much. I have to find it. I have to find it later. And,
he's doing what our dad used to say: if you had an infinite number of rednecks with an infinite number of shotguns with an infinite number of stop signs, you would get all the great works in literature in Braille.
Something like that, yeah.
Well,
he was an expressive man.
That's, that is so funny. That reminded me of a lot of things, but okay.
Well, Sherry, this has been fantastic, and your insights and your expertise, honestly, is just amazing. What you produced, like my brother said, he tried to duplicate it or get close, and you just produced some unique and stellar work that anybody should be hiring you to advance what they're trying to do. So I'm a big advocate for you, and I look forward to seeing what you produce in the future, and continue to follow you on LinkedIn and share some more conversation in the future.
I do try to share. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I do try to share my process, but at this point, it's not the prompt really anymore. Like I could give the prompts away, but it doesn't even help you, because the prompt doesn't give you what I showed you. It's
based on what you shared today. I get that. Yeah. What good is a prompt when it's the process?
And that's what I tell people when I'm doing presentations on AI, is it basically comes back down to your level of expertise. One, to create the prompt that you're going to use, and then two, to vet it once it creates content, so that you know how to curate it like you're doing. And that nuance, people just don't understand that nuance and what you bring to the table when you're talking with clients and helping them solve their problems with this particular technology.
It is an amazing, I will just say one last thing, because I haven't talked enough about that, but it is an epic visualizer in the right hands, and you can save so much time and money. I didn't even talk about the practical application, and I would love to end with this. If you give you an example, like you could create a whole fashion line without having to invest money in a photo shoot or in the product, and go to the store and say, hey, do you like this? Do you want us to change something? And the investment of energy into ideation is so much less threatening that I think it's going to make manufacturing so much more efficient, and bring the cost of production down for so many things. And yes, there will be people who lose their jobs, and all tech does that. So I would just say, sharpen up your critical thinking skills, think like a curator, and learn the tech, because it actually helps us in many, many ways.
Yes, it does.
Agreed. Thanks.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Sherry. You have been fantastic, and as always, your work is stellar.
Thank you. Thank you. So nice to talk to you. You guys it was a very intelligent conversation, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate the intelligence you bring to our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, great. We'll be in touch.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.